Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
Yeah, it is great to be back.
And just really quickly, today's deep dive into our source material is drawn from a SpeakDuo lesson. You can go to SpeakDuo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English-speaking abilities.
Absolutely. It's such a great resource for that.
It really is. So we are skipping any lengthy preamble today and going straight into the idioms at hand, which are designed specifically for advanced English learners.
Right, because today's deep dive is framed as a journey through the life cycle of a professional, basically.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, we're going to explore how to eloquently describe ambition, workplace crises, and then finally, the wisdom of experience.
Okay, let's jump right into the ambition phase, like the start of a career or a new project where your motivation is just sky high.
Base camp, essentially.
Exactly, base camp. So our first phrase here is aspire to be.
Right, and aspire to be indicates a strong, sincere desire to become something or, reach a goal. Like, you might say young people aspire to be artists or entrepreneurs.
Okay, but I have to push back here because why add the extra syllables?
What do you mean?
Well, why can't I just tell my boss I want to be a manager? What's the actual difference between wanting something and aspiring to it?
Okay. It really comes down to the altitude of the goal.
The altitude.
Yeah, because want is a basic, everyday desire. It's almost biological, right? Like, you want a sandwich, you want to take a nap.
Right, yeah.
But aspire implies this lofty, long-term, almost noble goal. It requires significant dedication and growth. You don't aspire to eat lunch,
That makes total sense. Want is a sandwich, aspire is the summit of the mountain.
Exactly.
So using aspire completely changes how your ambition is perceived. Like, say you're taking the IELTS exam, right?
Oh, great example.
And in part 2, the examiner asks about your future. You don't just say, I want a promotion. You say, I aspire to be a team leader and improve my project management skills.
Totally. It just elevates your tone so much.
But of course, ambition doesn't always go according to plan.
No, it definitely does not.
So what happens when things go backward? Our next phrase is reduced to.
Yeah, reduced to means being brought down to a simpler, worse, or just more limited state.
So if my company restructures and changes my title, is this just a dramatic way of saying I was demoted?
Not quite. And this is where the nuance is really important, because demoted to is literal. It's formal HR jargon.
Like it's the ink on the contract.
Right. But reduced to is highly figurative, and it's super emotional. It emphasizes the feeling of loss or boredom or the indignity of a complex job suddenly becoming really basic.
Oh, wow. It's almost like a shrinking of your professional identity.
Precisely. You lose your status.
So imagine you're talking with a colleague, venting about a reorganization. You wouldn't just state the facts. You'd say, after the reorganization, my highly strategic role was reduced to routine paperwork for a while.
Yeah, you're telling them exactly how frustrating the fall felt.
Right. Now, let's say you survive that setback and keep climbing. As you rise in your career, the stakes get higher and the risks get way more dangerous.
You enter the pressure cooker.
Exactly. Which brings us to our third phrase, a high wire act.
So a high wire act describes an extremely risky, delicate situation where literally any mistake can cause failure.
But I hear people use this, and I always think they just mean they had a tough job. Is it just a colorful way of saying hard work?
No, because a tough job just means hard work. Sweating, long hours.
Grinding it out.
Right. A high wire act invokes the imagery of a circus acrobat. It's about delicate balance and severe consequences. One tiny slip, and disaster strikes.
Oh, so there is zero margin for error. That is a terrifying picture. But say you're updating your boss on a stressful project. You could say, coordinating this product launch felt like a high wire act with no margin for error, but we pulled it off.
Perfect. It tells your boss, you didn't just work hard, you navigated incredible risk.
But how do we end up out on that high wire to begin with?
Well, usually it starts with one tiny bad decision.
Which brings us to phrase 4. A slippery slope.
Yeah, a slippery slope is a small, seemingly harmless action that leads to progressively worse consequences.
Okay, wait. I always thought slippery slope and domino effect were the exact same thing.
They share a mechanical similarity, sure, but the nuance is totally different. A domino effect is just a neutral chain reaction.
Just physics doing its thing.
Exactly. But a slippery slope specifically implies a negative moral or operational decline. It means your standards are degrading over time because you allowed one tiny exception.
Ah, it's the normalization of bad behavior.
Ex-
So in a team meeting, you might say, letting people ignore this one minor safety rule can become a slippery slope toward total chaos.
Right, you're pointing out the hidden danger in a small choice.
Okay, so navigating all this requires evaluating people's skills and massive amounts of work. Let's look at how we make those judgments. Our fifth phrase is, by any stretch.
This is used to emphasize that something is absolutely not true, even with a very generous interpretation. It's short for by any stretch of the imagination.
But if someone asks if I'm good at something and I'm not, why not just say, not at all?
Because a flat not at all is really dismissive. It slams the door. By any stretch is far more colorful. It implies that even if you try incredibly hard to bend reality, the statement is still false.
Oh, I see. It softens the blow a bit.
It really does.
So if you're evaluating a candidate, or even yourself, you could say, I'm not by any stretch a great cook. I burn simple recipes sometimes. Or he is not by any stretch an expert in that field.
It's a very diplomatic way to deliver a rejection.
Now, what about when you fully commit to a massive task or you're moving departments, you have to pack up? Our next phrase is kit and caboodle.
I love this one. It means everything in a group, the complete set or the entire package.
It sounds so musical. Why would I use kit and caboodle instead of just saying everything?
Because everything is just so plain and literal. Kit and caboodle is this fun, highly colloquial way to refer to a massive physical collection of things.
So it lightens the mood?
Exactly. Especially during a stressful move or transition.
So, casual workplace example.
Yeah.
You might say, when the team moved to the new office, they packed up the kit and caboodle overnight.
Perfect. They didn't leave a single paperclip behind.
Okay, so after years of dealing with the kit and caboodle, you gain experience, but you also get a little older. Which brings us to phrase number 7, spring chicken.
Right. A spring chicken literally refers to a young, fresh person.
So can I point to my new intern and say, look at that spring chicken?
I mean, you could, but it would sound incredibly patronizing.
Oh, right.
The fascinating thing is that spring chicken is almost exclusively used in the negative. We rarely call someone a spring chicken.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Instead, you say, you are no spring chicken, to humbly and humorously acknowledge your own aging while claiming you still have energy.
It's self-deprecating but proud. Like for an IELTS Part 2 answer about hobbies, you could say, I'm no spring chicken, but dancing still makes me feel youthful.
Exactly. It shows you're still very much in the game.
But being no spring chicken means sometimes your memory gets a bit fuzzy. Which leads us to our final phrase, rings a bell.
To ring a bell means to sound familiar and trigger a vague memory.
Is this just the middle ground between I remember and I forget?
Basically, yeah. I remember means you have the facts clearly. But rings a bell describes that frustrating feeling where a name sounds familiar.
But you can't access the details.
Exactly. The cabinet is locked, but you know the file is in there.
We all know that feeling, like role-playing with a colleague trying to recall a client. That author's name rings a bell, but I can't recall the specific book they wrote.
It invites them to help you out without you sounding entirely forgetful.
All right, we have reached the summit. It is time for the superbly said SpeakDuo quiz. I'm going to read a prompt and 3 options for all 8 questions.
And we're going to see if you can spot the correct figurative use of the idiom rather than falling for the literal traps.
Yep. I'll read the options, and then I'll ask you to pause if you need to. Then we will immediately reveal the answer. Ready? Let's dive in. Question 1. Which sentence uses the idiomatic phrase kit and caboodle correctly based on context? Option A. The highly exhausted, tired young cat owner accidentally dropped the complete kit and caboodle today.
Oh no, not the kit and caboodle.
Right. Option B. The deeply confused amateur artist hopelessly searched everywhere regarding that missing drawing kit today. Or option C. When the corporate office unexpectedly relocated, they carefully transported the entire kit and caboodle. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the correct answer is option C. As a quick reminder, we used this earlier to describe moving the entire package or complete set of things to a new office, not a literal drawing kit or kittens.
Okay, question 2. Select the context where the phrase slippery slope is most appropriately used. Option A. Ignoring those incredibly minor workplace safety violations often creates a dangerous corporate slippery slope. Option B. The incredibly clumsy, exhausted, tired mountain hiker unfortunately fell down the terrible slippery slope. Or option C. The deeply frustrated, angry local delivery driver accidentally purchased the completely useless shivery soap.
Shivery soap.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option A. Remember, it's a figurative term about a small, harmless action leading to worse consequences, like ignoring one rule leading to chaos, not a literal muddy hill.
Moving on to question 3. In which situation does someone accurately utilize the advanced phrase reduced to figuratively? Option A. The highly experienced professional busy restaurant chef carefully reduced the delicious sauce into nothing.
Okay, culinary literal use there.
Option B. Following that massive corporate restructuring, her prestigious administrative role was unfortunately reduced to nothing. Or option C. The incredibly confused, exhausted young student accidentally produced 2 terrible essays this late afternoon. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. We discussed this regarding a role being brought down to a simpler, worse state, much like the colleague whose strategic job became routine paperwork.
Question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase, by any stretch? Option A. That extremely inexperienced junior employee is definitely not a financial expert by any stretch.
No.
Option B. The highly exhausted, tired professional fitness instructor demanded you perform another long physical stretch. Or option C. The completely terrified rural mountain camper desperately attempted to quickly catch any fast wretch. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option A. It emphasizes something is absolutely not true, even with generous interpretation like admitting you aren't a great cook.
All right, question 5. How would a professional accurately use the phrase high wire act, figuratively? Option A. The incredibly brave professional circus acrobat beautifully performed an incredibly dangerous tall high wire act.
Very literal.
Yep. Option B. The deeply exhausted, weary theater performer completely forgot about that terribly dry choir act. Or option C. Managing that incredibly complicated, massive corporate merger truly felt like a dangerous high wire act. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option C. It figuratively describes an extremely risky, delicate situation with no margin for error, rather than the literal circus performance.
3 left. Question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the figurative use of rings a bell? Option A. The deeply traditional old ancient cathedral caretaker proudly aggressively rings a bell every morning. Option B. That extremely unusual foreign author's name certainly rings a bell regarding my childhood literature. Or option C. The terribly confused, clumsy young restaurant waiter accidentally brings a shell instead of oysters. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. It means something sounds vaguely familiar, like trying to recall an author's name, not striking a literal piece of metal.
Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the advanced phrase, aspire to be? Option A. Many highly ambitious, brilliant young university students constantly proudly aspire to be successful entrepreneurs.
Okay, sounds good.
Option B. The incredibly sick, exhausted old hospital patient realized he might suddenly aspire to see. Or option C. The incredibly focused, dedicated historical building architect desperately wanted a tall spire to see. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
Option A is correct. It's about a sincere desire to reach a lofty goal, like aiming to become a team leader.
And finally, question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses spring chicken figuratively? Option A. The incredibly hungry, enthusiastic, busy backyard farmer cheerfully purchased a beautiful, healthy spring chicken.
Cute, but literal.
Option B. Although she undeniably remains incredibly physically active, she is absolutely no spring chicken anymore. Or option C. The incredibly talented, professional bluegrass musician absolutely loved incredible, fast acoustic string picking today. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The final answer is option B. Remember, this is used in the negative to say someone is no longer young, but usually still energetic.
And that is it. Huge congratulations to you for completing the quiz and adding incredible nuance to your English toolkit.
Yeah, you've officially survived the vocabulary climb. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Oh, let's hear it.
Notice how many of our most advanced workplace idioms, like a high wire act or a slippery slope, rely on physical danger or gravity to describe purely intellectual or corporate problems. Why do we subconsciously equate office stress with physical survival?
That is so true. We're perfectly safe at a desk, but our brains think we're falling off a cliff.
Exactly. So pay attention to the idioms you use this week and see what physical metaphors you are unknowingly relying on.
Amazing amazing thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and keep practicing.